Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Well, as we know, this summer has been an eventful one and has involved on many occasions the plights and plunders of your Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Most recently, we've been consumed with their ongoing national scavenger hunt for force reset triggers, wide open triggers, and solvent traps. But today comes more news that we have yet another major issue brewing on the horizon, one that we need to start talking about now, and one that this will probably be the first in a series of videos as more things develop. So today we're going to have to spend a few minutes and talk about pistol brace amnesty. What does that really mean to you? Okay, so the issue we're talking about, and I admit that I am late to the party. This issue kind of broke late last week, right before Labor Day, between running a full-time law practice and having some Labor Day activities planned. I was not able to get to this, so I admit that many other people out here in the YouTuberverse have gotten out in front of this issue, and I apologize for my tardiness on this. I also want to give a very special thanks to the ATF, because there are often days where I'm sitting around here in my office trying to figure out what can I do a video about today to help my viewers. And sometimes, candidly, you struggle with coming up with material. However, the ATF is the gift that keeps on giving this summer, and I do want to thank them from the bottom of my heart. Okay, so the issue we're talking about is not a new issue. We have talked about this issue before. We have already done a couple of videos on this, and I did this video right here where I really speculated, and this was about a year ago, as to how would the ATF try to enforce this pistol brace rule. Now, this pistol brace rule was a rule that we were trying to understand. There had been a version of it that had been published, and then we learned that although the rule was supposed to be published in August last month, the ATF had pulled that rule back and was going to republish it in December, which means if that is the case, if these rules that we're talking about today are published in December, they will become effective in April of 23. Remember, any Code of Federal Regulation which is published is automatically enacted, unless stated otherwise, 120 days after its publication. Now, one of the reasons that this rule may have been pulled back was the holdings from the United States Supreme Court in the case of West Virginia versus EPA. Now, we've already done a video on that, and for those of you who have not geeked out on that case yet, I highly recommend you do. Now, in short summary, what the EPA was doing was coming up with all new rules and regulations for how we had to conduct our energy policies, which essentially would shut down the fossil fuel industry in advancement of the green energy industry. Sound familiar? The problem in doing so, though, is that when you shut down an entire industry and then try to rejuvenate another industry, what you're talking about is hundreds of millions, hundreds of billions of dollars being transferred from industry to industry and greatly affecting national commerce. Shockingly, the Supreme Court said, hey, when we're talking about exchanging this much money, when we're talking about a significant change, or what we call a major question doctrine, in the way that America conducts its business, that is an act that needs to be conducted by Congress. That's the act of the legislature, not the executive branch. That's a violation of the separation of powers, and the EPA was slammed down. Now, what's going on here with the ATF and their pistol brace rule is there is an estimated 20 to 40 million braced pistols in the United States. Now, that was the estimate that I could find, and that estimate was about 2 years old, okay? That was from about early 2020. So, candidly, there's probably significantly more than that out there in the United States. Now, if we were to take every one of those AR pistols, all of which have been completely classified as lawful, legally owned firearms, they are non-NFA regulated items, and as we know, several years ago, the ATF authored an opinion letter which stated that these were perfectly legal firearms. If we were to suddenly, overnight, say, you know what, all of these now are NFA regulated firearms, which means they either must be Form 1 or Form 4, and there is a $200 tax stamp to pay. Well, now we're talking about generating for the federal government somewhere between in the neighborhood of 4 to 8 billion, with a B, billion dollars of additional tax revenue. So what I think the ATF is doing here to try to do an end around of the West Virginia EPA holding is creating what they are now calling the pistol brace amnesty registration period. Oh yes, you know, the ATF, the full service, customer service oriented operation that they are going to offer to you, the lawful and responsible gun owner, the opportunity to register your otherwise non-regulated firearm, your firearm that you absolutely legally purchased or made, that you absolutely legally possess at this time. They are going to give you an opportunity to register that with the federal government for the low, low price of absolutely nothing. Okay, so this is how this story got broke, and it was broken by a guy named John Crump. He writes for AmmoLand. He does a lot of other things, and he does have a channel here on YouTube, and I really highly recommend all of you to subscribe to John's channel. He doesn't have enough subscribers right now, and this guy has a lot of inside sources, inside connections. He really is on the cutting edge of breaking news in the 2A community. He came across a document in which the ATF was requesting additional budget, the additional funds in the budgeting process to redo their Form 1. Oh my gosh, why would they have to redo their Form 1? This is what their budget request stated. Due to the upcoming amnesty registration of pistol brace weapons, photos of the weapon being registered will be required to prove the weapon does utilize a pistol brace in its configuration and would qualify for an amnesty registration. Now, without getting into the obvious constitutional and tyrannical problems that many of you, I'm sure, will comment on, let's talk about some of the more practical problems with this proposal. Number one, what we are being asked to do as lawful and responsible gun owners is register a firearm that we were not required to register with the NFA for no reason other than they've decided to change their mind. These firearms were in fact purchased by lawful and responsible gun owners. They were lawfully purchased or lawfully built. They are lawfully owned. They are lawfully maintained, and they are lawfully possessed. At this point, however, the ATF would like all of us, all of you in particular, to willingly give up information related to each of these firearms, not just including the make, the serial number, the caliber, the configuration. No, they want photos of the firearm itself, they want photos of you, and they want your fingerprints. Now, let us not forget that many of us have already been through these common background checks necessary to buy the firearm in the first place. Now, I've already done a video about whether or not the ATF does in fact have a national gun registry. And as we know, through the Firearm Owners Protection Act of 1986, federal funds cannot be used in any way, shape, or form to build a national firearms registry. Now, we've done this video already where we basically said, hey, that may be the law, but this is what the federal government and the ATF has been doing for years. And do they have a national firearms registry? You better believe it, they do. Would this significantly help them grow that database? Yes, it most definitely would. And so they are asking all of you, the lawful and responsible gun owners out there, will you please cooperate with us in building a large national firearm registry? Now, even if you were to go along with this little game plan, let us not forget that currently the e-form system, which is being used, the Form 1s, the Form 4s, has been breaking under its own weight, in particular quite a bit this year. This has led to a significant amount of delays and other problems associated therewith. If suddenly, come the first part of 2023, there is a 4-month amnesty period of which 20 to 40 million firearms would need to be registered if everyone actually complied with this. There is no way on God's green earth that our government has built a web system that would support that volume. Now, in addition to all those problems, let's take a look at what the problems come with just inherently having an NFA firearm. Now, you may have been able to avoid the tax stamp for now, but it would merely take an act of Congress to retroactively go back and tax everybody on this, thus creating that $4 billion worth of additional government revenue. But here's the other things that come with a regulated firearm, such as a short barrel rifle. Number one, only you can be in possession of it. You can't have somebody else be in possession of that firearm unless you are in their presence. If somebody else is found to be in possession of an NFA-regulated firearm, they are in violation of the law and subject to felony penalties. And if you willfully handed that firearm over to them, you too are subject to felony penalties. And then, of course, there's the issue of wanting to transport a firearm across state lines. If we have non-NFA regulated firearms, we can transport them across state lines. The federal safe passage provision gives us the ability to do so. Now, we might have to change the way we're carrying the firearm at that point. As we cross state lines, we may have to unload the firearm and secure it somewhere else in the motor vehicle, but we can continue to move forward on the path we are traveling with that firearm. The same, however, cannot be said for NFA regulated firearms. Under federal law, if you want to take an NFA regulated firearm across state lines, you have to fill out an ATF Form 5320.20. That's right, you have to get ATF's prior blessings before you are allowed to cross state lines. And oh, by the way, the date from application to approval currently is about 30 days. Now, add another 20 to 40 million firearms into the circulation that would qualify to have to go through this paperwork, and we could see how long the delays could become. So once again, the pistol brace rule was pulled back. It is going to be republished in December. Now, we'll try to do some videos between now and then, but candidly, a lot of those are going to be speculative in nature. And remember, we will also be starting a separate series of videos here coming up in the next month. We're going to be talking to an FFL, and it literally is a series of videos called Ask an FFL, where we will be going through every component of ATF's Form 4999, a form that if you're not familiar with, you should start familiarizing yourself with it now. We're going to put a link for that down below in the description box. That is the form by which ATF will use to score a firearm to determine whether or not it is an AR pistol or a short barrel rifle. After the rules are published, we'll have a much clearer picture of what are we really dealing with here and how are we going to do with it. What can you do in the meantime? You need to contact your legislators. You need to contact your United States senators. You need to contact your representatives, and you need to let them know that you oppose the ATF's action here. Listen, in the meantime, you may have more questions about this or anything else related to your Second Amendment rights, and if you do, don't ever hesitate to contact us at WashingtonGunLaw.com, or of course you can call us directly at 425-765-0487. Now, let's remember, part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here at Washington Gun Law, is to know what the law is in every situation and how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching. Stay safe.